Literally the first person to see this book.
Yes. Are you kidding me? This is
very,
so
like,
beautiful. Wait, I have to show it to the camera. I'm going to brag about the fact that I'm the first person to have the full copy.
I'm so
in my
nervous
hands.
about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I'm like, are the colors right? Like,
I love the colors. Okay. Also, these colors are so you.
Thank you.
I feel like the last couple times that I've seen you, you wear these bright fun colors.
Yeah.
I remember when I saw you at Soho Malibu from across the place. And
Was I wearing bright colors?
I think I texted you and I was like, are you in Malibu and are you wearing like a bright colored outfit? Because I think I see you, because I never know, of course, where you are because you're nomadic and exactly. Yeah. But this is so beautiful. And from what I have dug into so far, it's such a good book and it's going to be so helpful for people. So I'm really excited.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much.
This is your second time on the Balanced Blonde podcast.
I know. First was at your house. I was like, can you bring Huddy here?
I know. I was looking at him when I left this morning, like how I wish I could just bring him with me.
I know. That's how I feel about Bella. Have you ever tried one of the like backpacks with the...
He won't let me.
Bella
we have one. And
I have
he's
a
just
Solely
like
baby wrap that my friend who's a mom gave me, and I really want to try wrapping Bella in it.
Oh my God, you have to. Would she let you? Because Hudson's the kind of cat who will not let me do anything of that nature.
We will see. I'll report back. I'll report back.
How old is she?
Oh God, she's a little elderly baby. She's 14, I want to say.
Oh, yeah, baby girl.
I know.
It's crazy how fast the time goes.
It's crazy when I think about like the things she's seen me through in my life. Like she has seen me through college, graduation, and moving to New York and moving to London and becoming engaged to Zach and marrying Zach and, you know, starting my editorial jobs and then quitting my editorial. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, they see you. Our pets see us in a way that nobody else does.
No, really at my worst. Truly, the things
well,
that 100%.
Hudson was basically present for my labor since I almost accidentally had Atticus at home.
Yes.
So he was there and he was upset for months.
Yeah. Could he sense the energy happening? Was he like, mom's in pain?
Oh, I mean, there was no question about it. I was like writhing and screaming and didn't really realize that the baby was like coming out. So Hudson was really mad at Jonathan. Actually, we talked to an animal communicator because he was so traumatized, and he was really mad at Jonathan and said she was in so much pain and you didn't save
you take care of her? Oh.
And Jonathan's like, I didn't know what to do. Oh
my God.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Oh my God.
So crazy.
Is Jonathan cool with the fact that video went viral?
Yes.
He's like, does he think it's funny?
He does.
Okay,
he's
good.
such a confident person.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a Leo like you. And he doesn't care at all. I was more affected by people being like, he's horrible. We hate him. Divorce him. And he just likes to play into the bit. So he's like, let's keep it coming.
Yeah.
I love that these
smart.
strangers hate me.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
That's like the smart thing to do. And sometimes emotionally, I'm like, I could handle that. But most of the time emotionally, I'm like, I can't handle that.
I know. I think it's because he's so not a public person that he doesn't really care if half the internet were like, ew, he's the worst husband ever. Where I think for us being more public-facing people, I don't want my reputation to be
it's your
weird.
livelihood
Yeah,
as
totally.
Well. Like, this
totally.
is literally my job and my ability to make money in the world.
Totally.
You know?
So it's super different.
Yeah.
What about Zach? How does he feel about being shared?
He likes, so like he doesn't let me share his last name, which I really respect a lot. He designed my book cover.
Oh my God.
And it literally says like designed by Zach M.
Wait, how
He's
cool.
like, it feels very share energy, you know? But he likes to keep his privacy, but he's super happy to like show up in videos. But he just doesn't like people to know who he is in real life or be able to track him down or like know his job in real life or things like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you guys have a different last name than each other?
Yeah.
So do we.
Thought about taking his last name when we got married because I didn't really care, but so many people were telling me like Liz Moody is such a good name. I'd already had I think 1 or 2 books out by then, so I was just kind of like, I'll keep it.
I know, it's an interesting thing. I think I'm legally Jordan Albrecht, but I completely go by Jordan Younger.
I think it's kind of fun, like Hannah Montana, to have the public facing name and then the private facing name.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. But I also feel like if I have a baby or anything like that, I'm like, I don't know. I carried it in my body. Like, you can take my name, you know?
Totally. Well, that's the thing. Like, because I go by Jordan Younger so much, like, if I'm filling something out for Atticus, like, he's at this, like, Gymboree thing today, it says Atticus Younger, but that's not his name. But then I'm also like, it sounds so good.
They both sound good. I was actually just thinking in my head which sounds better. And Atticus Albrecht sounds really good, and Atticus Younger sounds really good. So
I know,
feel like you can't
for
choose
different
based on
reasons,
that.
because it's like the AA,
Yeah.
but Younger.
It's just-
I don't
it's a
know, maybe
classic
it's because
name.
I grew up with it.
Yeah.
It's like, just feels so
Well, have you
good.
heard there's studies that show you're more likely to do a job if it is something to do with your name? So, like, all of my parents are psychologists, and my last name's Moody. My sister's a psychologist. Her last name's Moody. Because we're all narcissists, and so we like the sound of our own name, and we like the vibe of our own name.
I believe that 100%. I love the vibe, and that's why I haven't given it up.
Yeah.
Like, I love the silly jokes everybody says when I say my last name, and they're like, "Oh, haha, never gonna get older." Like,
You're like, sure.
I know, yeah.
Sounds good.
Like, I'm happy to hear it every single time. So funny. Okay, so you brought your amazing cards here.
I did. Yeah, I just was worried you and Jonathan didn't have enough to talk about.
Yeah. No, of
You
course.
seem really, like you're having a hard time.
For sure. So I want to choose a question. I want us both to choose a question.
Yeah.
And ask each other.
Okay.
What did you learn about love from your parents' relationship?
Oh, I love this one because I've shared it online before, and I'll share it like a little question box, and people will be like, ugh, I didn't learn anything about love. And I think we can learn things about love regardless of whether our parents have a good relationship. So my parents got divorced when I was 2. My mom remarried and then got divorced again. My dad remarried and then got divorced again. So I don't really have good relationship models from them, but I learned so much about what not to do about love. I learned that I wanted somebody who really felt like a life partner to me. I think a lot of the attributes that I look for in love and Zach, I highlighted, and I intentionally sought out because of what I didn't see in my parents' relationship. So I learned a lot about what I wanted the shape of my life to look like. I think that teammate element, that partner element, that we're really in this together. This is my best friend. We're going to talk about everything over communication. I did not grow up in a communication household. I grew up in when we're mad at each other, we silently slip past each other in the hallway, and there's just that like energy and tension household. And so Zach and I communicate about everything, and it is so satisfying.
Wow, what a good answer. I love that.
Wait, do I get to pull one for you?
Yes, you get to pull one. I
you
love how
care what
tall
category?
this stuff. No, just dive on in.
I feel like I'm going to do a growing up for you too then. Oh, that one's kind of boring. Oh, I like both of these. Okay. We're going to do, what was your favorite food growing up? Because I'm actually curious.
Yeah. Salt and vinegar chips. I had a screen name called Salt and Vinegar Chick. Salt and Vinegar Chick. Because I was so obsessed.
You love them so much?
Yeah, with like ranch dip. I was so into it.
And then what was your first memory of feeling independent?
Oh, that's a really good one.
We have a light and a heavy.
Yeah, first memory of feeling independent. I think there was like the false independence of when I went to like sleepaway camp for 2 weeks, which when you're a kid, it feels like months, feels like a lifetime.
Did you like it, or were you like crying as you were leaving
So
home?
I liked it a lot the first time, and then I went to a different one the following year, and I hated it. So I think it just had a lot to do with like the people and the cabin that you get put in and just that whole environment. So
I went to camp 1 year, and my aunt came and visited and was like, this is appalling. Like, what is the living conditions that they're making you be in here? And I thought it was so nice. I was like, I'm with all my friends. We get pizza for dinner. This is the dream.
Where did you go? Or like,
it's called Maine Teen Camp.
Okay.
And it was all teenagers, and I think that was like the cell. But it was just like, I think it was pretty dilapidated conditions, but it was like one of the best summers of my life.
Yeah, I love that so much because you grew up in Berkeley?
No, I was Tucson until I was 14 in Arizona, and then I went to high school in Modesto, California, which is in the Central, you're Central Valley, baby. And then went to Berkeley for college.
Right. Okay. Then now I remember. I knew that you were like Northern California in some way, shape, or
Zach's
form.
from Berkeley, like born and raised, so that's where we often go back to. That's kind of like our home base.
Love it. Wow. So something I'm so excited to talk to you about is your process for writing books.
Oh my goodness.
Because you have written now three published books, but I also know you, and you're probably working on another book or like have other ideas. And how do you get it all done? How do you like actually actually do it.
I also love that you said 3 published books, because I have a number of books that aren't published. And I think that's important to talk about, since we often just see the results. We see the end product. We see the books that are successful and getting all the press and the praise. But I got my first agent when I was 18 or 19. I wrote a memoir, which
amazing.
is significantly too young to write a memoir.
I did the same thing, so I understand.
But my mom had gotten in this accident when I was 2 years old, and it just sort of broke apart my family. That was the reason my parents got divorced. And I got told a lot of disputed truths around that event, and I was really trying to kind of get to the objective truth of that situation. And so I wrote this memoir. I got an agent. I was like, I'm going to be an ingenue. Everybody's going to be obsessed with me. I'm going to be on. I literally said to my agent, I was like, Cosmopolitan doesn't put authors on the cover of their magazine, but we can change that.
Oh my God, I love it. I love the confidence. It's so Leo.
Big dreams. And then that didn't get published. She couldn't sell it to a publisher, and it was devastating. And then I wrote another book. She was like, memoirs are really hard to sell. Maybe try fiction. I wrote a novel I wrote a book of essays, and then that didn't get sold. And then I wrote a novel, and that didn't get sold. And so I think talking about the failures along the way is really important. I learned so much, both about the publishing process, about my own writing process, about who I wanted to be as a person. I think I just did an episode about how to get out of a slump, and somebody was saying they're afraid to try things because they're afraid to fail. And the most successful people I know just fail over and over and over again. Because, like, first of all, it's a numbers game. Like, the more you try, the more you're going to fail. But the more you try, also, the more you're going to succeed. So literally numbers are on your side. And I think that happened with my books. But second of all, I think teaching yourself that you're resilient and that you can handle failure is one of the most powerful things you can do for your psychology. I feel impervious to failure at this point. This book could come out and everybody could be like, well, okay, that was nice, and then it's over, and I'd be like, okay, on to the next.
Oh, that's a good place to be.
You know, and I think that's, you only get there through failure, so there is never a failure that is not a success in some way. The writing process. I think a lot of people, and I used to think this myself, think that, like, you have to be creatively inspired, and then you're going to sit down and you're going to channel book, and maybe you do this because you're actually good at channeling creative energy and things like that. And you can, like, have this burst of inspiration and sit down and type. And I have friends who do that. By and large, the successful writers that I know do not do that. They set a word count goal for the day. They set a specific time that they have to write, and they vomit out garbage during that time, knowing that it will be cleaned up later. That is my process. For this book, I did, I think, 1,000 words a day was my goal. And I did that every single day, like whether or not I had other plans, whether or not I was sick, whether or not it was rainy out, whether or not I didn't get a good night's sleep the night before. I did 1,000 words a day. It was almost always, very rarely, I was like, this is genius. You're an amazing writer. You really nailed it. But most of the time it wasn't very good. And I was just like, I know I'm going to clean this up in editing. So I think giving yourself permission to vomit out hot garbage for a first draft or first stage of any creative project is so freeing, because it's the thing that actually lets you get something out on the page.
Yeah. Oh my God. So 7 days a week you would do that?
I would do that I did that 7 days a week for this book because we were trying to hit deadlines. Normally I do 5. I'm a big fan of, taking
Weekends.
some breaks.
Totally. Wow. Yeah. And then how many words did it end up being?
It ended up being like 137,000. And then my editor was like, we would like it to be 80,000 words.
Story of my life as well.
And so I was so like, my initial reaction was not positive. I was like, I'm not going to cut 50,000 of the words that I've written, but I actually think the book is so much better for that. It's tighter. We consolidated tips. So we were like, oh, tip 89 and tip 127 are kind of similar. Can we put these together? And then that tip is so much stronger because you have several different expert and doctor perspectives. And so for me, while I shaped it at the beginning, I think it's a much better book for it. So I think it's around 87,000.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. I mean,
around 87. I'm like around 87,169 books. Somewhere
exactly.
around there.
Yes. No, I get it. I'm the one who's always writing way too over the amount of words, and then I don't want to part with them, and then I get really upset, and then I try to put them somewhere else. Like, maybe this will just be another book then, because there's so much written. But it's true. Like, I can be repetitive. I'm sure you're not necessarily repetitive.
No, there was stuff that was repetitive. I think that when we all kind of are attracted to certain like thoughts or mindsets, and we kind of we infuse that over and over and over again. And I think you can consolidate that often. But my girlfriend, who's a professional novelist, and she writes a lot of really successful books, she literally has a document on her computer, and anything she's cutting goes in there so that she doesn't have to deal with the emotional pain of parting with it.
I love that. Yeah, that's what I do too.
Even
but
if you never go back to it.
Yeah, well, it's not just for nothing.
Yeah, it's not lost.
Totally. Okay, that's amazing. That's so inspiring. So 1,000 words a day, rain or shine, no matter what. And that's such a good point, because you said the thing about the channeling and waiting for the burst of inspiration. And that's what I was doing for years, but it wasn't going anywhere, because you don't feel that way very often. I would feel it like at the spark of the full moon, or I'd be like up all night, like, this is amazing. I'm such a creative genius. But then it would just live on my computer, because you have to have consistency to get something like this out into the world.
100%. And I also think that inspiration comes in the doing. And I think we don't talk about that enough. I think action often leads the thing that we want to feel. I think that for my anxiety, for instance, if I sat around and waited to not be anxious, I would probably be back bedbound with my agoraphobia. But instead, I do the things like, what do I want my day to look like anyways? How do I want to feel? And I let the action be the thing that starts to like push away at that anxiety, that starts to chip away at that anxiety. And I think for writing, it's really the same thing. Like, I want to be creative. I want to have creative output. I do that by being creative. And then that makes me more creative. Sitting down and writing, and I'm on word 500, and then it's really flowing, and I'm feeling it, and I'm inspired, and I'm creating what I want to create. So I think that asking ourselves, like, what would the person that we're trying to do in this moment can be really helpful to doing that thing rather than waiting and just like doing it anyway.
Totally. Yeah, that's such a good tip. I saw this quote that said, writing is not fun. Having written is fun.
Oh my gosh. Every writer I know feels that way.
Totally. Yeah. Like, I think it can be fun when you get in the flow, but definitely not when you're like, oh shit, I have to do this because I committed to it and my brain is foggy and I'm not in the mood. That's not fun.
100%.
But after you've written 1,000 words, or whether you got in the flow or not, that's fun because you're sticking to your goals.
Yeah, I think I've been trying to practice a lot recently is that we learn to trust ourselves by keeping the promises that we make to ourselves. And so simply by saying, I'm going to write a book, and then writing a book, you're teaching yourself that you can trust yourself, and self-love is built off of self-trust. Because otherwise, if you're looking like in the mirror and you're saying, oh my God, you're amazing, I believe in you, I love you, but every other thing you've said to yourself that day has been a lie. You've said you're going to go for a walk. You haven't. You said you're going to work on your writing. You haven't. You're like, well, why would I believe you when you're telling me all this positive stuff about me? So I've been really trying to practice making those promises to myself and then keeping them and trying to build that relationship with myself so that I trust when I say that I'm going to do something, and I trust when I say that I think or feel something.
It's the most life-changing thing we can do. I was the person forever. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to Pilates today, whatever.
Yeah.
And then not do it because I'm like, oh, I deserve a day off.
And I think that sits in the back of your brain. Like, I just think it niggles away and you're like, oh, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm capable of. I don't know if I can trust what I'm saying about and to myself.
Yeah, you get to the point that's like, I can't do that. Like, I must be incapable because I just am not doing it. So it's super inspiring to see you doing it. It's amazing. This is out in the world. A question that I had for you. Yeah. A lot of people write into me, how do I get an agent? I want to write a book. What's the first step? You know, what did that look like for you? Because you had your first agent when you were a teenager. I'm assuming different person now.
Agent, yeah. So my favorite tip for getting an agent is to go to the bookstore, look at the books that are similar to the type of book that you want to write, flip to the back, the acknowledgement section. 99.9% of people are going to acknowledge their agent. If they're not acknowledging their agent, that's probably not an agent that you want to work with. So I would say flip to the back, look for the acknowledgement section and see who they're thanking as their agent, and then Google that person. They'll probably say like open or close to queries. Queries are the little notes that you send people to say, I want to write a book. This is what my book's about. And then they'll usually have instructions for how you can query them. So you can kind of make a list of like, like I thank my agent in the back of my book. And if your book that you want to write is similar to my book, then my agent might be somebody that you would want to send an email to.
Love it. Yeah, that's such a good tip.
I also think you can Google so much. Like my first book, my popsicle cookbook my first book that I got published, I literally Googled how to write a cookbook proposal. And then I made a cookbook proposal based on one that I found online. Like there was just an example one. And I was like, okay, I'll do exactly this. Like you can Google so much. And I think starting broad, how do I write a book? And then you'll probably get some article that's like, first you do a query, then you find an agent, blah, 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 and then following those specific steps. So then you can Google, like, how do I query? How do I find an agent? And there's so much available online these days.
I know. It's so true.
It's so empowering. Like, I feel like we just have so much more information than we've ever had. And sometimes that can feel obviously daunting to navigate. But it's also cool that anything you want to do, probably somebody has shared some information that will help you on your journey.
Yeah. Oh, I know. There's everything out there now. It's kind of, I mean, it is empowering. It's incredible.
Do you have an agent?
I do.
Okay. Are you going to use the same agent that you did for your last?
Yes. Yeah. So I've thankfully had her for like 9 or 10 years.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
She's grown so much. I was her second client. Do you know Jessica Mernan by any chance? So she was her first client, and she's the best.
Client.
Yes. And yeah, Sarah found us when we were like
babies
starting out, and she was starting out,
God,
and now she's huge, and she has all these like massive celebrity clients, and I'm just like, I'm like, this is my idea. I've had to come a long way within myself to like step into this next phase, because my first book was a memoir at 21 or 22. I don't resonate with it. That's something that I've had to just let go of and just move on from, and it's just life.
I think that's interesting to say too, because we do put so much pressure on our projects to be like, this is going to be who I am forever. This is going to represent me forever. And most people don't feel that way. They feel like it was resonant at the time. It was the best thing they could produce at the time. And now they're a different person and they'd probably produce something different. And that's okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'd just be editing forever. Or at least I would be. Like, because it changes and it's a snapshot of life. That's what I try to think of. Somebody told me it's like the wave in an ocean, and it's like a snapshot of that wave.
I love that.
6 months later, that wave is gone.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that that can't help so many people who are at that stage in their life.
Yeah, I love that. I had an old writing professor who said never take more than 3 years on a creative project, because who you are after 3 years, you'll just want to start everything from the beginning again, and then you'll be caught in this process.
Yeah, it's horrible. No, it's so sad.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done that to myself, so I totally get it. Are you working on another book?
Not at this moment. I'm really focused on my podcast. I'm focused on this book, and I'm focused on regaining my mental health after the process of writing this book.
Yeah, talk to us about that, because I know that you're out here in LA right now. You're doing tons of interviews. So dedicated to this wonderful book, and that's of course, part of the process.
Yeah.
So how are you taking care of your mental health?
How am I taking care of my mental health? So I have little things and I have big things. I would say little things wise, I am trying to, I guess it's a big thing, honestly, but I'm trying to eat really well. I'm trying to eat things pay even more attention to the things that give my body energy, that help me sleep well. I'm paying a lot more attention to, for instance, keeping my blood sugar super stable. I always think that's important. There's literally a tip in the book about that, but I'm more dedicated to that than I would maybe be in my normal life. I'm meditating every single day, which again, I do in my normal life, but I'm not normally this dedicated to it. I'm trying to find little micro breaks for myself. So there's a tip in the book about doing micro workouts, which I absolutely love. So that's these like 2 minutes, 3 minutes of moving your body throughout the day. And there's actually really interesting research that shows that that can be more beneficial for our overall health, and particularly for our glucose, but also for things like creativity and longevity, than doing one bigger workout. So if you have to choose between little tiny micro workouts speckled throughout your day or one bigger workout, like the micro workout's the one you'd want to choose. So for instance, after this interview, I'm going to just like go walk around for 5 minutes, and I think that little 5 minutes can be enough of a reset, but often we feel like we should just reach for our phones and kind of sit there. We're like, oh, like my brain needs a break, but our brain actually gets a better break by just going for a micro walk outside. Or if we can't do that, like 5 squats in this office would help me a lot and just get the blood flowing. So I'm trying to be really, really good at between meetings, like all of these little micro breaks throughout my day. I am trying to spend as much quality time with my husband as I possibly can. I'm reading every night. I'm really prioritizing my sleep right now. Because I just think sleep is such a foundational health thing. So I'm never on my phone before bed. I have the room really cool. I got my weighted blanket. I've got all of those types of things. I'd say those are like the main things.
Yeah, those are amazing tips. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, when I was reading your book this morning and I got to that part about the micro workouts, I got out of bed. I did like jumping jacks. I did the stretches that I always tell myself I'm going to do. But then I was like in a rush, of course. And then I saw that and I saw, you know what? That's going to feel really good.
And it's enough. I think a big theme of my book and of what I do on my podcast and what I do on all my channels in general is just like, often we're setting the bar too high and then things get intimidating and we're like, oh my gosh, I have to do all these supplements. I have to do all of these different habits. I have to work out for this long to reach my goals. But often we haven't even stepped back and been like, what are my goals? Like, what am I trying to attain? One of the first tips in the book is called Find Your Why. And I think that is so incredibly important for us finding the motivation that we need to do things. If you're just kind of like, oh, I'm doing it because this influencer online does it, that's not going to be something you're going to be able to stick with later. But if you're doing it because you're like, oh, my mental health benefits so much when I move my body throughout the day, that's going to be something that you're going to be like, oh, I need this for my mental health. This is really helpful. I'm seeing real results. I'm motivated to continue to do this. So I think figuring out your why is both going to save you a ton of money. It's going to save you a ton of time, and it's going to help you actually find and stick to the habits that you need to achieve your goals.
Such a good tip.
Yeah.
Back to the sleep, because I wanted to ask you, what is your sleep chronotype? I was reading your book, The Sleep Chronotype. My audience knows I'm obsessed with that topic.
I'm a night owl for sure, for sure. I don't know if I'm like full, so I know you're dolphin, right? Yeah, I don't know if I'm like full, but I tend towards a night sleep schedule. And so I'm always trying to do the things that pull my circadian rhythm back to a baseline. That's another huge thing I'm doing for my mental health is being so strict about my circ walks in the morning. I do a walk 5 to 10 minutes outside, like literally first thing. I roll out of bed, I go to the bathroom, I brush my teeth, and I get my little sippy cup and I go walk around outside to try to pull your circadian rhythm. So if you go outside in the morning, you're going to pull your circadian rhythm forward in the day. So you're going to feel more tired at night. And if you go outside in the evening, you're going to push your circadian rhythm back. So you're going to feel less tired at night and you're going to push your bedtime back.
That's why it's so, I love to go on walks in the evening.
Yeah.
Like,
just wear sunglasses.
I'm a night
That's actually
person.
Really, like if you're going on a walk at dusk and you don't want to push your circadian rhythm back, you can wear sunglasses.
Okay. Yeah. I need to be better about that. Oh, that's amazing. What is your favorite tip in this book?
Okay. So again, it changes all the time because this book is meant, you can read it straight through and that's amazing. But this book is really meant to be a handbook. So at different moments in your life, maybe one moment in your life, you're like having some gut struggles. So you'll go to the have a healthy, happy gut section. You'll flip through it. You'll find a tip that suits you at that time. Maybe one time in your life, you're trying to really prioritize your friendship. So we have a section for that. It's really meant to be like a little poo-poo platter where you can pick and choose the things that resonate with you and that are your why. They fit your why at that time. For me, for right now at this moment, I will say there's a tip in the book about rewiring your neural pathways for happiness that I love. It's from research from Dr. Rick Hansen. And basically the idea is like your brain is a meadow, essentially. It's just like a clean, beautiful meadow. All of the grass is really high. And when we think thoughts, we trod through that meadow and we push down the grass and we start to make those paths. So if you're thinking thoughts like, I'm stressed, I hate myself, everything's awful, you're making those pathways through the meadow. And then what your brain wants to do in future moments when you're thinking future thoughts is take the pathways that are the easiest to see, that are the most carved out. So he does this thing where when you have a good moment, and it can be really tiny, it can be cuddling Bella is a big one for me, where I'll just be cuddling her. I'll smell her neck fur and I'll sit there, and you want to linger in it for a little bit longer than you normally would. And you want to amplify that feeling a little bit more than you normally would. So if you're hugging your partner, if you're reading a really good book, I was sitting out in the garden reading the other night and I was just like, oh, this is so lovely. Like, this is such a nice moment. And so I took the moment to notice the good, to turn it up a little bit and sit in it a little bit longer. And what that does is it carves those pathways in the meadow so that your brain is more likely to feel good and think good thoughts in the future, even when you're not trying to, because again, it's going to try to take the easiest path to tread, and you're making that path easier to tread. So I love that tip because it takes literally 5 seconds. You can do it without anybody knowing. It doesn't cost anything. You can do it throughout the course of your normal day, but it makes you feel better on future moments with no effort necessary. I love no effort necessary.
And it can totally change your life.
Yeah.
And yeah, no effort necessary, but so life-changing.
Yeah.
That's been definitely one of the most life-changing things for me, just kind of getting out of that habit of thinking the same old pattern, negative thoughts, and really switching over to those positive ones, even if you have to fake it until you make it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I have a hard time forcing myself to think new thoughts. So I think for me, it's the noticing when good things are kind of inherently happening. Because otherwise, I do feel sometimes I tend to be a little bit more of a cynic. I tend to not tend towards belief as much as I maybe would like to. And so I think sometimes if I'm just like, everything's great, like I don't believe that. But I love that this is like real neuroscience. It's grounded in neuro, like, biology. It's grounded in what's actually happening in your neural pathways.
Yeah, that's such a good tip.
Yeah.
For all the people listening who feel more like you. Like, because I think
Do you have those people? I feel like your people are just like
yes and
more,
no.
They're better at believing than me.
I think
like.
so.
Yeah.
I think
and
like
I love
a lot.
that.
I do too.
I'm jealous of it, honestly.
I think you're becoming that way, especially by me reading so many of these tips in the book. Like, they're so aligned with that way of thinking. But yeah, there's always the people who are like, well, I just can't be as optimistic as you. And I'm not as optimistic as people think. Like, I put those thoughts out there. I want to teach that to everybody else, but I still have a hard time on my own. So,
what do you think is like the biggest difference between how people perceive you and how you feel like you are in real life?
Wow, that's such a good question. I do think I've been told by some of my friends, my real life friends who are not in this industry whatsoever, that they'll listen to the podcast and they're like, you're kind of like a character on your podcast. And I didn't really agree at first because I really feel like this is me. This is who I am. I'm definitely not acting or anything, but I think there's some degree of like you show up the way that you think people want you to. So I show up to my audience. I'm always going to try to have the positive spin. I'm not just going to say, this was really hard and then not give some kind of tip on like, well, let's make it better.
Otherwise you're kind of like, why am I talking about this? Like, you're like, if I'm using people's time and I'm sharing a hard thing, I think the inherent human desire is to share a lesson or share something that you got from the situation.
Yeah, which I think is hopefully also how I am in real life. Like, I'm not just like a big complainer. But yeah, I think the misconception is that I am just like so ethereal, so spiritual. How could I ever connect with like people who are just so much more grounded? And I think I'm just more normal than people might think. Like,
you're all the things. Like, that's what I connect to about you, is I think if you were just like spiritual and floating off in space, like, I don't feel like I would connect to you as much. But like, all people are all the things, and I think that learning to give space for that is like one of the most helpful things in forming relationships and being a human being.
Yeah, totally. What about you? Do you feel like your audience has misconceptions about you?
I don't think they have misconceptions about me. Everybody who meets Zach in real life is always like, oh my God, he's the extrovert in the relationship.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't realize that. But he definitely is. Like, I'm an introvert. And I think a lot of people who are online are, because it's like, you picture us as talking to this big audience, but we are alone with our phone camera.
That's like, why we chose it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's more common than people think. But yeah, Zach's like definitely the one who gets the energy. He never wants to leave the party. Like, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go home and read a book now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just like me and Jonathan.
Yeah.
I think people there's probably no misconceptions about Jonathan because he's...
Oh my God. Is he as perfect as he? Like, that'd be my
he
thing.
is a very likable person.
Yeah.
I don't think...
very likable. And he also seems like he's stepped into this dad role so beautifully too.
Totally. He's such a good dad.
Yeah.
He does so much. And I think when people ask me what's it really like to be a parent and how do you deal with all the hard aspects, I think about it and I'm always just like, I have Jonathan. Like if I was just a mom who had a partner who maybe like I was the one who really wanted to have the child, so a lot more fell on me. It's just not like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, super thankful for him.
Yeah, he seems like a gem.
What are you guys thinking about kids? I love the open dialogue that you've had.
Yes.
So I hope it's not an annoying question.
No, but it's not at all. I've set myself up for it.
Yeah, I send people to your podcast when they're like, I don't know if I want to have a kid or not.
Thank you.
Because you have these conversations that like nobody has. And I think about it when I'm having like the hardest time. I think about how you've like had anonymous people who have said like I regret having kids, and I don't feel that way, but I definitely see how someone could.
Well, and isn't it so interesting too? I get all these comments on my social media like you could never regret having kids. It's literally impossible because they see me trying to decide and they're like, if you have kids you won't regret it. And I'm like, I don't feel like we've created a safe space for people to say that they regret it. And the second you create that safe space, you definitely do. I had, though, this psychologist on my podcast, Dr. Robert Waldinger, and he did...
I love that guy.
Oh, he's amazing. His energy is so gentle. He's just like, I'm just like, oh, I love you. I want him to be my uncle. Yes. Him and Rick Hansen, I'm like, I'm working on making them my uncles somehow.
Love.
But he said, and I thought this was so interesting, because he did the longest study that we have of basically what makes people happy in their life. It's over 80 years. And he said that we're going to have regrets no matter what life we choose. And we really focus often on the regrets of the life we didn't get to live. And I think that really resonated with me. The idea that if I have kids, I'm probably going to have regrets about that. And if I don't have kids, I'm probably going to have regrets about that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just part of the human experience. And I think that's really freeing. So I think when people say, nobody who has children has regrets. I just think that that's not true to how we function as human beings. Like, I think we're always going to be looking at the millions of lives that we're not getting to live and thinking, what would that be like? And that's completely okay. So we are thinking, I did this episode recently with Merle Bombardieri, I believe is the right way to say her name. She's a therapist. She specializes in helping couples decide whether or not they want to have kids. Ooh. She also does infertility counseling. And we did a whole episode about how to make that decision and how to navigate all of the questions around that and waiting till later and what about your fertility if you wait longer in life and things like that. And she said that for many people, and this is not universally true whatsoever, and I definitely recommend people listen to the episode to get more nuance, but for many people, if you can't decide, having one can be a really good option because you kind of get the experience of having a kid, but it doesn't take over as much of your life as having 2 or 3 or more. And so I think that is what we are leaning towards. I think we're both very curious about the experience. But it's scary. It's really scary. It's scary that you can't try it.
I know. You know? I know. There's no give backs.
There's no give backs.
Unless you like foster or something, but that's a totally different experience.
Yeah, that's a totally different experience. And so I just like, it's really scary. It feels like a really big shift in transition. She also said, and I encourage people to listen to the episode for more context on this before they rip me apart, because there's a lot of people who are going to be like, well, what about fertility, blah, blah, and we addressed that. But she said that she thinks that the ideal age to have a child is 38. And I found that incredibly comforting, because I think the older that I get, people are just like, you need to do it, you need to do it, you need to do it. And I've had my fertility tested, my husband's had his fertility tested. We're taking kind of those steps, but it just gave me a little bit of peace of mind of waiting a little bit longer.
I love that. Yeah. I love that so much. And I've always said, I think it's a myth that, you know, we are not at our peak fertility past 35, or everybody has something different. I know so many people who are having kids in their 40s, like in such a healthy way.
I think it's just unique to our bodies.
Totally, because some people have issues trying to get pregnant when they're in their 20s.
I have friends with fertility issues who are in their 20s. I have friends with fertility issues in their 40s. And I certainly think, and the science supports this, that it's not like a cliff you dive off when you're 35. Like,
totally.
It's not just like, oh my gosh, you went from fertile to infertile. And we sometimes talk about it societally like it is that.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
It's not like that at all.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do, the wisest thing is like test your fertility now and just see where you're at.
I think the more information that we can have, the better. And also back to like the find your why concept, the more information that we have about our health, the more we'll know about our why. You know what I mean? Like if you're like, I am vitamin D deficient, so I am taking vitamin D, that's such helpful information to know versus like an influencer advertised this vitamin D, so I feel like I should take it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I can't wait to see. I can't wait
Well,
to see.
baby.
Yeah. And how old are you right
I'm
now?
37.
Okay. Oh, so there you
So
are.
I'm approaching.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, so you're close.
Yeah. Jonathan's 37, so you're 1986.
Yes.
And you're a Leo.
Yeah, so we're the same person.
Literally. When's your birthday?
August 14th.
Okay.
When's he?
Yeah. He's July 26th.
Okay.
So he's like
Does that make us
18
different?
days older than you.
Like, is it different to be born at different points
Kind of.
the Leo
I
sun
mean,
cycle?
I particularly feel that way, that like July Leos are different than August Leos.
Okay.
September Libras are very different than October Libras, but also it just depends on your whole chart. So
Wait,
like
so what's my book's in October Libra?
Ooh, love.
What's the vibe there?
I mean, I can tell you that firsthand. I'm an October 11th Libra. It's going to be very harmonious.
Okay.
And reading this book, I see that. Like, this
Okay.
isn't the kind of book that people are going to be like upset over. Like, ugh, this is so controversial and I loved it or I hated it.
Yeah.
Like, people are going to love this book because there's nothing controversial about it. I mean,
It's all,
possibly
like,
somebody could get
very
to
grounded
something
in
where they're
science,
like, no, I don't like that.
Yeah.
But Libras, they're very balanced. That's what it is. Like balanced, likable, sociable, all about harmony, like equality, just wanting everybody to get something from it.
I love that. Well, and also like a lot of the book is like, here's the tools, here's the science, use it if you want, but also we're never losing sight of the fact that we want to feel as good as possible now. My whole thing is I want you to feel as good as possible now, and I want you to feel as good as possible later. And I feel like often we sacrifice the feel as good as possible now for the feel as good as possible later. We're like not going out with our friends, we're stressing about our habits, we're trying to like fit all of this healthy food in, we're depriving ourselves and restricting and all of that. So that feels very balanced. I like it. It's a Libra.
Yeah. So what's the date? What's
October 17th.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
October Libra.
My sister was trying to do like the sun, moon, rising in my book, but we couldn't decide, like, is it born in New York? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what time is it born? It's
I know.
hard.
Yeah. Well, what time is it going to become like
like,
available?
midnight, I guess?
So you could do it from there.
Yeah.
Like East Coast time.
Okay.
We should do it.
And like New York, would you say? Even though it's like, I don't think it's printed in New York.
Right.
But that's when it's available to the
Yeah, I think so.
public.
I
Because I guess
think
it's incubated, not in New York,
Yeah.
but it's born in New York.
I would say New York.
Okay.
I would go with the East Coast
Okay.
time. Yeah, and then you can see the human
Then I'll see
design.
the whole thing, yeah.
Yes. What's your human design?
I don't know.
Oh my God, we have to look it up.
Yeah.
Because do you know your birth time?
Yes.
Okay.
I've texted my mom 47 times. To
Okay,
ask my
cool.
birth time.
So we have to look up your
Okay.
human design. I feel like you would love it. It's
You're
just-
a manifester?
I'm a reflector. I'm a reflector. On the other end of the table at Olivia's
Okay.
dinner where we both were, I was doing everybody's human design.
Oh my God, really?
Yes.
We were
it was
talking
so
about
fun.
sex.
Love it. Just a wonderful conversation all the way around.
All the way around.
Yes. So I would guess that you're maybe a generator
Okay.
or a manifesting generator
What does that mean?
or a projector. Actually, I think I'm taking it back. I think you're a projector just because of the way that you are with your energy. So reflectors and projectors, it's called the non-energy types. And it really just means that we're more introverted and
Okay.
need to spend more time alone. We thrive off of working like
Yeah.
a balanced amount of hours a day. Like for reflectors, it could be like 3 hours or less, which I don't necessarily do, but
I'd
that
like
would
that
be
one.
right.
That sounds nice.
And similar for projectors. And yeah, we recharge alone. We're really sensitive to other people's energy. The best strategy for projectors is to wait to be invited. So for like work stuff, I don't know if you relate to that. Like if you are invited on a big podcast, for example, that you're pitching yourself.
I'm pitching myself. Yeah. My life motto is never be the one to say no to yourself. I have it in the book. I've shared it on social media. And the idea for me is just that like people can say no to you out in the world, but I don't like the energy of saying no. And I think it's different if you're like waiting to be invited and you're confident that'll happen.
Totally.
But I love going after the things that I want.
Maybe you're like a manifesting generator. We're going to look it up. Okay. I'll put it in the intro or the outro. We have to know.
Okay.
Something else I just wanted to talk to you about was that I really noticed over the last several years, probably since you were on the podcast last, I feel like your career has exploded and your presence online has really reached all new heights. How does that feel? And I mean, do you agree? Do you feel like that's been something?
Yeah, you were kind enough to have me on the podcast when I was like a tiny baby. So I definitely think that's true.
I mean, I always saw you as very influential, but I feel like things have really exploded.
Yeah, I do. I feel like with the audience of the podcast has grown so much. So I think that's really been foundational. And then a lot more people have found me online, and that's been very satisfying, although obviously it comes with its negative parts too. You know, you can always tell when one of your posts goes viral, like it's inside your community. Everybody's so nice and the comments are so nice, and then you can literally tell the second it tips because the comments just get so mean. Like
100%.
It goes from being so supportive, so kind, and then everybody's just like tearing you apart and you're like, oh, okay, great, my post has gone viral, wonderful. And so there's been a lot of that, but mostly it's been really fun. I feel like the more my audience grows, the more I have access to these incredible experts that I want to interview, that I want to glean all of the information from. And I'm such a curious person. I think curiosity is my superpower, hands down. And so getting to have these conversations with these people is so gratifying. And I'm so grateful that the community that I've built enables that, and that I can share those people's wisdom with my community as a result. It's like a nice little cycle.
Yeah. And also TikTok. I feel like you really blew up on TikTok.
I was early on TikTok. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I think it was like February 2020, and I was like, I should download TikTok. Like, I should just do it, because I felt like I was so late to every other social media platform. Like, by the time I wanted to do YouTube, by the time I started my podcast, I felt like everybody had already started a podcast, and I was just kind of like late to the game. And I know now that's not true. Like, I'm so glad I started the podcast and I didn't let that get in my way. So if you think you're late, if you're listening and you think you're late, you're not
still
late.
Not.
Like, you're on your own right timing. So please go for it. But I just remember being like, you should download it. And then the pandemic happened, and I think my third video or something like took off. And yeah, it's fun. I love editing videos. That's like when I was in high school, I edited videos for fun. Like, I'd make these like little creative video projects and edit them. And so for me, when social media switched from like cute pictures to video, and I could be a little bit more creative in that way, I was like, oh, I love this. I'm super on board, you know? And like have to be less just like, like it's not like a pretty picture. It's like, what do you have to say? How are you entertaining? And I'm really, for my personality, I like that a lot.
I think you're really, really good at that. I've noticed, like the videos, the recipe videos, the editing quality, the teachable aspects. Yeah, you're really, really good at that.
Thank you. So I have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah,
and I'm not good at like just being like, here's a photo of me. You should like. I need to actually. I think that's something I need to work on, is feeling like I'm enough simply by showing up and being myself. I always feel like a little bit like I have to provide so much value, and like, and I think that's so important. I love that element of my brand, but I'm trying to also channel a little, not just like where I'm going to be posting selfies all the time and that's my whole brand, because that's obviously not, but I do think I could become more comfortable showing up just as myself and feeling like enough as that.
I love that. I love that goal, because it's true. Well, I mean, like you were saying with solo episodes and that kind of stuff, people follow you because of who you are. So it's interesting to see, like, what are you actually doing in your downtime? What books are you reading? Just stuff like that.
100%.
Well, I guess that's still value, but like just, just a photo, just anything.
Yeah. And I so I'm trying to lean into that. And I'm doing more solo episodes, which has been really nerve-wracking, but really, really fun to not just be like, oh, people are going to show up to the podcast because I have this amazing world-class expert, but like I have something to say too, and people want to hear that as well.
Yeah.
So that's been a fun journey.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Yeah.
And where can everybody find you and this new book, 100 Ways to Change Your Life, which is such a good title?
Thank you so much. It was not our original title. We had to change it because of Oprah.
What was it before?
It was How to Build Your Best Life, which it didn't fit the book because building suggests this idea of like you have to do one and then the next and then the next. And this book is not that. This book is like you can take tip 47 before you take tip 2, and that's totally fine. Well, tip 1, 2, and 3, I feel like everybody should do first. But you can take tip 47 before you do like tip 22. But then Oprah released a book, which I think came out really recently, and it's called Build the Life You Want. And so like my agent called me one day and she's like, like Oprah has this book. You don't want the same title as Oprah. And so we frantically changed the name. We had like 2 weeks to think of a new one. My Aura Ring stats, literally the day I got that call from my agent, my heart rate went up, and it didn't go down until we like had
a new
name. So you can see the stress on my in my physical body.
I love this title.
Thank
I think
you.
it's perfect.
I love it. I think it's so interesting, like how that works out. It is perfect.
Yeah.
It is the title for this book. So 100 Ways to Change Your Life is available wherever books are sold. You can also just find it at 100waystoChangeYourLife.com. I'm Liz Moody on all social platforms, and then I'm the Liz Moody Podcast.
Amazing. Yeah, so you changed the name of your podcast too,
Yeah,
which
I
I
did.
noticed when I was reading this book, just because it says Liz Moody Podcast everywhere, which is smart. I mean, just branding all the way around.
Yeah,
Well,
it was so nerve-wracking, honestly, but I'm so happy that I did it. I just felt like Healthier Together. I loved it as a name. I love the community element of it still, and I'd say that's the part that I'm saddest to lose. But people think of healthy as like, we're going to talk about supplements, we're going to talk about our diet, we're going to talk about working out. And I've always used healthy to be like healthier relationships, healthier finances, like all these broad, we talk our pros and cons of having kids series, one of our most popular series. So for me, I wanted a name that could hold all of that. And like we were saying earlier, like we are all the things.
Yeah,
And so we
it's
can
the umbrella.
create that space for all of that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, this was so fun. You're so easy to talk to.
Thank
always.
you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here.
I'm excited to find out what I am.
I know. We're going to look it up immediately, and I cannot wait.